So as you can see, the title is Tricky Like a Leprechaun, and it's a summary of the chapter in the book and some of the issues around that. So facing intensifying financial austerity within UK, local government and those responsible for the quality and continuity of public services recognise that innovation in service design and delivery, as alongside new ways for delivering public services, is critical, particularly now. Current research and practice in design suggests that greater involvement of and collaboration with citizens and other agencies may foster improvements in service quality by involving end users in research, prototyping and testing of services. And I actually think that this presentation builds very nicely on some of the talks that we had this morning, particularly Mahmoud's and Stephanie's. Central government is predicted to reduce funding to local government 78% by 2020. A shocking statistic. And this is anticipated to drive an unprecedented number of local councils into financial crisis, and we're seeing that already. The poisonous fruit of this austerity is a drive for efficiency and huge cost-saving measures. This sounds like a sensible response. However, efficiency is not without its problems, and it's not the same as effectiveness. And this was discussed a little bit this morning, I think. Furthermore, when pursuit of efficiency means people's needs are left unmet in one public service area, it often increases demand and costs to the public in another. Finding new ways to deliver services with reduced funding requires redundancy within the system to afford opportunities for experimentation, and we touched on that a little bit again this morning. However, efficiency is the enemy of innovation. Efficiency limits innovation by driving out redundancy and this space to experiment, reflect and learn in this instance. That's how we're translating redundancy. In the language of local government, redundancy typically points to reductions in staffing rather than superabundance, a useful surplus that offers multiple ways to achieve objectives and goals in a resilient system. Design education is a bastion of superabundance in thinking and doing that is essential to experimentation, reflective learning, and innovation. It is a social resource with the capacity to share redundancy with those who it isn't denied. It can offer the redundancy necessary to address the tricky challenges of public service innovation in the context of austerity. This is the practice within which the Public Collaboration Lab explored. The Public Collaboration Lab seeks to leverage synergy between design education learning objectives and local government operational objectives. By collaborating with local government and the citizens they serve, design education can extend learning and practice in collaborative, socially responsive design for students and researchers, those they collaborate with, within society as an action learning environment, seeking new ways of improving outcomes for residents. Collaborative design experiments seek new ways to find place-based solutions to local challenges through learning together by doing together. Through the Public Collaboration Lab, we explored and experienced a Labour Council forced into public sector cuts by a Conservative government, overcrowded families forced to choose between coping, housebound leaders forced into a transactional rather than a relational home library service, losing the potential for interest-oriented early intervention that the latter affords. A society forced into a choice between prevention and cure rather than afforded both. We argue that austerity was, and is, a political choice. The neoliberal prophecy that the public sector does not have the capability or the capacity to deliver public services becomes self-fulfilling, as the pursuit of efficiency prohibits innovation that might deliver effectiveness. Unable to balance the books, councils will have no choice but to abandon public services and the public infrastructure to private ownership at the cost of equitable access to public goods. The challenges faced within these design scenarios are not simply wicked, defined by no single problem owner and contradictory desirable outcomes linked to human subjectivities, but instead rather tricky. The desirable outcomes are not contradictory due to human subjectivities, but rather they are deceitfully and craftily constructed to be oppositional, linked to a privatization agenda that seeks to profit from provision of public goods, even when efficiencies required for profit deny resources required for effectiveness. Working in this context surface several ethical challenges, and today we're just going to mention three of them. We won't seek to answer them, but these may contribute as a starting point for discussion. And actually, I think they've come up, some of them have come up already. In fact, the first one definitely has. Complicity. Is to act with local government to be complicit? Should we let the system fail versus finding a new way to meet people's needs? Secondly, money, funding. Is the universities receiving funding from government for student projects unethical, particularly working in contexts where redundancies are being made and needs are going unmet? We argue that if there is money to support design facilitation, then it should be paid to graduates, and I think this was mentioned earlier. And thirdly, just for today, influence. Do we have the agency to act and the power to change the outcome? And this was definitely discussed earlier. Essential to ensure that the timing of engagements ensures the outcomes can meaningfully contribute to negotiations. Ultimately, how is the designer meant to operate ethically within this contradictory climate? So, what can design do in this situation? It can create a space that is safe, agnostic, equitable, and inclusive, bringing the diversity of skills, competencies, and resources to bear on collective visioning in response to challenges. Design can tell the truth through making visible the value, voices, synergies, and gaps in challenges. And, probably most importantly, it can amplify voices less well heard. And what can we do as designers? Most of us here are designers. Well, can we be comfortable with contradiction or duplicitousness? Be open, accessible, and transparent in the ways that we operate. Be responsive and not responsible, recognizing that it is not always clear which ethical design drivers or stakeholder agendas the designer should be responsible to. Recognize and be clear about the limitations of our power and agency. This was also mentioned, how do we actually implement some of these things that we're suggesting, some of these things that we co-design together? Be aware that there might be no right answer or none that can address all drivers and actors equally, leading to negotiating expectations rather than managing them. Sometimes we're left with that hat on rather than actually thinking about how we negotiate them. So collaborative design approaches can support the constitutive power of publics to both democratise innovation and innovate democracy. Co-producing public services by prioritising effectiveness over efficiency addresses the tricky challenge of demographic shifts combined with austerity, at the same time as collectively making visible, visualising and envisioning alternatives to the neoliberalism that fundamentally contributes to the inequality of access to public goods. Thank you.